Babylon, man, I've been so torn thinking about this world lately. Babylon, truth is so deluded and it drives me crazy. Babylon, this lost world is so hopeless. Babylon, Jesus Christ, that's where hope is. Babylon, no matter what they say, it's still so lost.
And Noah built an altar unto the Lord, and took every clean beast and every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. That is Genesis 8:20 through 9:2.
And this is the Resisting Balaam podcast, a podcast where we seek to encourage the saints to stand firm with him on his word against all of the accusations made by the world, the flesh, and the devil, as we engage the culture of death that demands the sacrifice of our children. I am Pastor Darren. That was Pastor Callie. This is a Wrath and Grace podcast. When I give a shout out to Wrath and Grace, let those guys know we appreciate them hosting us on their network. You can find out more about Wrath and Grace at wrathandgrace.com. There's 3 other podcasts available on there as well. And so you can go find out more about that there. Also, usually we promo one of their items. I just want to encourage everybody to go check out the t-shirts on there. There's all kinds of great gear. T-shirts. They got some abortion ministry type T-shirts on there. So just go check out wrathandgrace.com. They also have some conferences coming up with Vodi Bakum and some different things. So anyway, go check out the website, find out more there. Now, as if you listen to our podcast, you all of the people that listen to our podcast get 10% off on the website. So if you go to wrathandgrace.com and find some stuff that you like there, if you use the promo code resistance, you get 10% off. So go check that out. There's a lot of good stuff on there, and we definitely would appreciate you using our promo code. Let them know that our listeners are checking out the website there. Also want to give a special shout out to our Patreon members. You can find out more about our Patreon account at patreon.com/resisting Balaam. You can support the ministry there. You can become a patron for as little as $3 a month or as much as $20 a month, and you get access to early content. You get special member only content, which is something Callie and I have been working on. So you get that there as well. T-shirts, mat logo, all kinds of different things that you get when you become a patron. So you can find out more about that there. The biggest thing is you get to support the ministry and help us expand our audience, which is something that we're continually grateful to our patrons for doing that. So you can find out more about that, patreon.com/resisting Balaam. Man, it has been kind of stumbling through this thing because we're just getting back from, I don't know, how long did we take off? A month and a half, something like that?
Yeah, it's been a month and a half.
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels like it's been a while, but it's been good. We decided we wanted to take some time off. We both had some other projects we needed to work on, and I needed to get some more time with the family and do some things at the church. And I know you had some things that you were working on, and so wanted to take a break between season 1 and season 2 here. We got some exciting things planned for season 2, and so we're back. But before we dig into this episode today, both Callie and I got some different projects we're working on, and we wanted to just kind of share those with our audience. And so, Callie, I'm excited about what you're doing. I've seen the promo material that you put out on it. And I've seen some of the resources that you're pulling together for it. You want to share a little bit with us about this special project that you're working on right now?
Right. So I decided I'm going to put together a documentary film dealing with adoption.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to be doing is following around two families that are going through the adoption process, and also talk to a couple of other families that have gone through the process. I'm negotiating with some doctors right now to interview them on the science behind it, and how they grade them, what happens to these humans, and this type of stuff. And what I want to do is tell the story of these preborn humans by talking through these families that are willing to rescue them from their cryogenic prisons. So that's what I'm working on now. So if you can pray for that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know I've been praying for that already. We want to invite everybody to pray for that project. The in the even in the battle for life, sort of the forgotten aspect of the battle is all of these little babies who are created in the image of God that are stored in freezers all over the United States of America. And even for many of us that are active in the battle for the lives of the preborn, we don't often think about that aspect of the fight. And so, I'm excited to see what you're doing with that and the stuff that you're going to be doing with those families. So definitely praise God for that. And do you have any idea when that's going to be available, or are you kind of just in the pulling everything together phase?
Right. So it takes 9 months to have a child. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's going to be at least that long, you know.
Yeah.
So
Right. Right.
I don't know, maybe a year. It
Okay.
it all depends on how everything like falls into place.
Got
So
it. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be praying over that, and want to invite our listeners to definitely pray for Callie and those two families. I know that it's a difficult, painful process involved with adopting babies that way, and so definitely going to be covering that in prayer. I don't know if I'd want to call this a project. So I got something else that's been going on sort of since we were last on the podcast. So a lot of people that are here are big fans of Operation Save America, and so Pastor Rusty Thomas has sort of made this public at this point, and so Pastor Rusty is going to be retiring from Operation Save America in May, or no, June at the national event. So when he retires, our friend Jason Storms, who's been on the podcast, great brother, love him, appreciate him. He's going to become the new national director of Operation Save America, and then me and a brother named Lucas Childress are going to be stepping in as assistant national directors, and so I'll be filling that role as assistant national director starting in June of this year. And so I'm excited about that. I love Operation Save America. Rusty Thomas and Operation Save America are a big part of the reason that I'm in this fight to begin with. I've learned so much from him. I've learned so much from so many of the people that are involved in Operation Save America, many of the people that we've had on this podcast, a lot of godly older men that are involved in that particular part of the movement. And so I'm grateful to have the opportunity to serve in that role. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to serve Operation Save America and serve the movement in that way. And so that'll be happening come June. And so, yeah, we normally don't talk a whole lot about the ministry that we have going on outside of the podcast during the podcast, but those are two things that kind of came up in between season one and season two. And so I want to bring you
right.
guys in on those things, ask for your prayers. And so, those things won't necessarily affect the podcast at all, but there are some things that we got going on. And so we appreciate your prayers and appreciate y'all, especially those of you that are regular listeners to the program, appreciate your support and so forth. So having said that, did you have anything else you want to say about that, Callie, before we move into our topic today?
No, I'm excited about this new season. It's going to be good. We're going to do a still talk about a lot of the same things. We're going to have a couple of interviews. We'll also deal a little bit about different church doctrine. So we'll be able to bounce a bunch of ideas off of each other. So I think this is going to be a good season.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be good. I love the church doctrine aspect of the discussion. I think it's an important and needed part of the discussion. So that's going to be good. Um, I'm looking forward to the interviews that we have scheduled. And so yeah, I'm excited, and I'm always excited though, right? That's the joke. But I think this episode's going to be it's a difficult topic, but hopefully it's going to be useful to the kingdom and useful to the movement. It's a part again. We talked about at the beginning. You know, when we're talking about the documentary that you're making, there are some aspects. This topic is so big. We're talking about opposing the culture of death. It's so big that there are some aspects that are just kind of in the dark. They're just things that we don't think about very often. And one of the things that we've tried to do faithfully in this podcast is to shine a light in those areas. And this particular topic that we're going to talk about today is kind of shining a light on something that oftentimes in the pro life movement is ignored, either intentionally or unintentionally, and kind of left in the dark. And so we want to come around and shine some light over there and talk a little bit about it. So, Kelly, you want to introduce the topic, and then we'll kind of get into the discussion here.
Right on. So, what we're going to be talking about today is this idea of self managed abortion, right? So, some people will say back alley abortion or do it yourself abortion. What we're talking about is abortion that a woman does to unjustly kill her own preborn child without the supervision of medical care,
Yeah,
right? So a lot of times when we talk about the murder of these children, we've already talked about how it is healthcare, right? We've
yeah,
legislated this to be healthcare. Um, so what we're talking about today is the increase of women that are killing their own children outside of the um, supervision of healthcare providers, right? So this can be anything from uh, women that take abortion pills that they buy on the black market, right? So that makes up about 20% of them. It could be um, women that take other types of herbs or medications, and this makes up a huge chunk. And it can be other um, things that are done. Um, Technically, they call it physical techniques to induce abortion, and that can come in a number of different ways, whether it's like throwing yourself downstairs, punching yourself in the stomach, inserting stuff. Um, but these are things that we'll be getting into, I'm sure. So, yeah, the topic today is back alley abortion or self managed abortion.
yeah. So, okay, kind of getting into this, and one of the things you talked about, which I think is really interesting. You know, one of the things that'll happen when we're involved in debate and dialogue with people on the pro-abortion side is they'll say something like, you know, abortion's been around for a really long time. I mean, it's not new, and it's not new to America or Western culture. It didn't certain, you know, sort of arise out of nothing. Like there was no surgical abortion and there was no abortion, and then all of a sudden with the rise of surgical abortion became a thing. And they're actually right about that. Abortion has been around for a long time over the course of human
Right.
history. And you talked about herbs. Like women have been using herbs to bring about the death of their preborn children. I guess I don't know the exact, like when that practice first started, but a very long way back into history. And I read I was just going to throw this out here and then we could talk a little bit more about this practice. But I read an interesting article. I can't remember who wrote it, but it was a guy that if I said his name, you'd say, oh, yeah, I know who that guy is. He was a pretty prominent theologian. I just can't remember which one it was. But he was making the case, and the article was about abortion. And he was making the case in the article that that in Galatians chapter 5, when it talks about the fruit of the spirit, it also talks about the works of the flesh. And one of the things that it talks about in there is it talks about it talks about like witchcraft. I can't think of the actual
Hmm.
word now. Um,
Pharmakia.
yeah, pharmakia is the Greek word. What's the English word? It's not witch. Well, sometimes it is translated witchcraft.
Sorcery.
Sorcery, yeah. And that word pharmakia is actually dealing with spells and potions. And one of the things he sort of traced the meaning of that word through classical Greek and then into Koine Greek, and basically made the case that this word, one aspect of what this word was talking about, was actually the practice of women aborting their children in the first century. And so I thought that that was really interesting. But the idea of pharmakia was dealing with herbs and so forth to bring about the end of a baby's life. And so this is something that I say all that to say. This is something that when we're talking about women killing their children through non-traditional medical means, this is something that's been going on for a very long time.
Right. Yeah. And what we're seeing over the past, decade is an increase of this happening outside of medical supervision, right? So, and what we're seeing is because of, their claim is that because of restricting legislation and because of the distance that women have to travel and the rise of RU46 and the rise of the abortion pill, that it makes it easier and cheaper for women to kill their own children outside of the healthcare environment that the state already sanctions.
Yeah. That's an interesting, even talking about abortion in that way, it raises an interesting point, which is that as long as abortion is legal, when we regulate it, this is one of the things that happens as an aspect of regulating abortion. When we regulate something and the market still exists for that thing, there's still a market demand for that thing. What happens with regulation is that the people, the guys at the top, the big guy, Planned Parenthood in this case, but others as well, they are just simply going to find more efficient ways to murder babies. And those, we talk about Planned Parenthood, we can talk about the individual women as well. Though these people want to have abortions, and as long as we're regulating it as healthcare and not treating it as murder, people are just going to come up with all kinds of more efficient ways to go about doing it that can work their way around your regulation and still allow them to continue to murder their baby. And I think that's what we're
Right.
seeing with these sort of at-home abortion type of things. And
Well, and there's other things involved with that. Like when we have the rise of abortion pill, right?
yeah,
Where 20 years ago it was like 3% of all abortions, and then it increased to like 10%, and now we're looking at somewhere between 30 and 40% of all
yeah,
of the abortions that are reported out of healthcare facilities.
yeah,
That's 30-40% of all of the abortions being done is by this pill. And so it's normalizing the use of this instrument in killing children, and then adding to that things like Texas in 2016 trying to ban very specific things that closed a bunch of clinics, and people drove to Mexico
yeah,
and picked up this pill. So we then saw this huge increase of the use of this instrument of death, and then with things like COVID, right? And the way the courts were pushing the FDA to change how the pill is regulated, right? So with the abortion pill, it's a two-pill series. The first one um,
yeah,
kills the child, right? It strangles the child. It poisons the child. It keeps the child from receiving the nutrition and oxygen that it needs, and so the child dies. and then the second pill is used to um, induce labor, right?
Yeah.
So what the FDA does is regulates that, where okay, you have to at least do um, tell a doctor,
Yeah.
to get the prescription. You at least have to um, see a doctor on the line, right?
Yeah.
And then you can take the pill without medical supervision, right? That's part of the regulations that the FDA has done. You can actually take the pill at home,
Yeah.
but the weird part about the regulation is you have to go to a clinic to actually pick up the pill that kills your child, right?
Yeah.
So they won't mail it to you. You can't go to a pharmacy. You actually physically have to go to the healthcare provider to pick up these pills. And so there are all these courts during COVID that was pushing the FDA to change their regulations, and that was a Supreme Court decision that just came down, right?
Yeah.
But what we've seen from that is a huge rise in a demand, and not just demand, but knowledge of this process. And a lot of it is going to come from online sources. And this is something I want to get into a little bit as we continue our discussion. Right. So we're talking about this numerical increase, this increase of not only individual numbers, but of ratio of women that are moving towards killing their children through this pill, and how that translates into not only an increase in these healthcare facilities, but also, and primarily what we're talking about today, is the self-managed healthcare, the self-managed killing of your own child through the same process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so as we're thinking through that, it of course, and we could talk about the different ways that women go about doing this, and you kind of laid some of that out already. One of the things I think we need to bring up now, whether we bring it or whether we bring it up now or whether we discuss it a little bit later, but the important reality is that all of these things, in some way, shape, or form, are like even in our pro-life regulations, the laws that we pass that regulate abortion, so to speak, like you talked about it. A woman has to go to a doctor to pick up a pill and so forth. You know, she's not. All of our laws are about even our best laws about regarding abortion are directed at the doctor and not the mother. So
Well, right,
she's yeah, she's not gonna be made even if we were to ban abortion and hold the doctor accountable, but not the mother, we would see more of this actually. This what we're
right,
talking about today would grow if we say, because this is what a lot of people push for when we're having these conversations, right? They say, well, let's go with your ban on abortion, but let's just not punish the mother, right? Because the world's not ready for that yet. Well, the thing that a lot of people don't understand is if we were to do that, what you and I are talking about right now, today, this self-medicated abortion thing, it would just go through the roof. It would just expand exponentially. Women would
right,
be getting RU-486 from Canada or from Mexico, depending upon what part of the country that they live in. They'd be accessing these sort of herbal remedy form of abortions, or worse yet, sort of the most popular one, which we haven't talked about yet, but it's the one that the pro-aborts like to talk about the most, is kind of like the coat hanger type of abortion.
right,
And so part of the reason what we're talking about today, part of the reason that it's so important that we make sure and criminalize this act on the part of the mother is because we're trying to keep what we're talking about today from being okay, that it's okay for a
right.
mother to go kill her baby.
Right, and that's something I'm sure we're gonna get into a little bit later, because I think that's a really important point. But real quick, the RU-486, that's the morning after pill,
Oh,
and you
yeah,
can
yeah.
already
Thank you.
you
Yeah,
can already get that over the counter
right.
at, like Walgreens, Walmart, and things like that.
Yeah,
Um, we're and again, we'll probably be talking about this later, is some of the underground websites and delivery methods of the abortion pill that already exists. And that is something that I do want to talk about here in a little bit after we check out our street ministry. We haven't done that in a couple of months. I'm
That's right,
excited to
man. That's
see
right.
that.
That's good. Yeah, I appreciate your correction on that. I don't know why I was thinking RU46 versus thank you for that. Um yeah, so we haven't gone to the streets in a month and a half now. So let's do that. Let's take a quick break here because we're about 25 minutes in. So let's take a quick break. We're gonna run out to the street. We'll do our street ministry segment, and then we'll come right back and we'll continue this discussion on at home or self medicated abortions. So we'll be right back.
Hey, my name is Brandon Scalf. I'm a pastor in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I just want to tell you a little bit about my experience and why I think it's important for people who are not pastors to be involved in the fight to end abortion, but more specifically, to encourage your pastors to do the same. So, a little bit about my story. I've only been in the abolitionist movement for about a year, and that's all because of a guy who came to our church and began to tell me about what he did on the weekends. And so he was volunteering to help out with the youth, and he would say, "Hey, Pastor, why don't you come with me to the abortion mills? I think that you would really get a lot out of it, and they really need your help." And I thought to myself, I don't want to be a part of that. I've seen that stuff on the TV. And I've also, I don't want to be associated with the Westboro Baptist Church. And that's kind of what I had in my mind. But he kept coming to me. "Come on, Pastor, come do this." And then I did what any pastor would probably do in that situation. I said, "Let me go support him. I want him to know I care about him. I want him to know I love him. And so this is not something I really want to be involved in, but to show my support, I'm going to go out there." And so I did that. And when I did that, I saw the darkness that pervaded the abortion clinics. I saw the sin. I saw the hard hearts of those taking their babies to slaughter. And here's the reality. I couldn't ignore that. And so I've been going as often as I can and coming to events like this conference that we're at here at the moment because God has commanded us to rescue those who are being led to the slaughter. And once you see that, it changes everything. So this is my encouragement to those of you who are not pastors, who are at a church, and maybe your pastors aren't involved. Get them involved. Be that squeaky wheel, because maybe the pastor's just misguided as to what's going on there, or maybe they don't understand the need. One of the things that I was convicted by, and I don't know what other word to use, but when I showed up to the abortion clinic for the first time, everybody acted like I was some sort of rock star for being there. And it wasn't because I'm awesome, but it's because pastors don't actually go out there. And so everybody was just blown away that some pastor showed up. And that broke my heart. Pastors should be out there, and if you aren't a pastor, you telling your pastor to be out there could change everything, both for that church and for the city. God bless.
All right, so we're back from the street ministry segment here. Now, I just want to say really quick before we move on, for those of you that listen to our podcast, if you're active in the streets doing ministry, whether it be in front of an abortion clinic or at a sporting event or just standing on a street corner preaching the gospel, and you got a story that you'd like to share on the podcast, reach out to us and let us know. We're looking for 3 to 5 minutes, a story of an opportunity you got to share the gospel with somebody, or a time you faced a spiritual warfare, or something like that. So reach out either to Callie or I. Let us know if you got a story that you'd like to share. And if you're listening right now and you're a regular listener to the podcast, but you're not active in street ministry, we just want to encourage you to get active, taking the gospel outside the four walls of the church and bringing the gospel to the streets, into the marketplace of ideas. And so if you want some help, or you need somebody to point you in the right direction for some resources to get started for that, hey, reach out to us and let us know. We're happy to put some resources in your hand to help you get active, bringing the gospel of the kingdom of Jesus into conflict with the ills of our day. So that is the street ministry segment. And so, Callie, we just kind of talking a little bit about, there's all kinds of different aspects of this self-medicated abortion thing. Before we go on with the legislative aspect of it, I think you want to spend some more time like laying groundwork about like what
Yeah.
what the different avenues are, why this is such a bad thing, and then eventually we'll get to the point where we're talking about why having legislation that criminalizes abortion fully is the only solution to this problem.
Yeah, I think that's important to see the impact of the legislation, and not dealing with all um, accomplices and co-conspirators and principal actors in this form of criminal homicide. But I think even before we deal with some of the methodology um, that's out there, and which I do want to talk about, and I want to talk about some of the channels and supply routes that are already being set up for this, because they're planning for this in the future. But I think let's start by dealing with how prolific the idea of self-managed abortion actually is, right?
Yeah.
And because, yeah, they like to talk about, well, if you make abortion illegal, all these people are going to die because they're going to, bloody themselves in the streets and this and that. And while there are very good arguments against that, um, let's talk about how pervasive the idea of self-managed abortion is, of a do-it-yourself, kill your own baby without going to a clinic, without paying somebody else to do this for you, without jumping through all of the legal hoops. How pervasive is the idea of killing your own baby at home,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so there have been a lot of research and polls and stuff, especially recently, um, during the COVID crisis, and the years before then, with certain legislation, especially in Texas. Um, and we really have seen an increase of knowledge among people that are going to kill their children, that they could do it on their own, right?
Yeah.
And this is how pervasive it is, right? I want to talk about this survey that was done uh, in 2019. All right, they did this survey in 3 clinics in Texas, in
Yeah.
McAllen, San Antonio, and Fort Worth, right, over a couple of period of months. And it was an anonymous survey within these 3 clinics, and they offered it to all of the women that came in for abortion. And over 90% of the women that were offered this survey did the survey. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a huge number of women that was willing to voluntarily be polled while they are killing their children. All right.
Wow. Yeah.
And so of those 90%, 30% said that they already knew about abortion medications that were available via the black market or down south in Mexico, that they could go and purchase and have and kill their own child at home without going to these healthcare facilities, right?
Wow.
And so that's 30% of these women already knew of how and what to do in order to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that number is going up.
Yeah.
Now, during the survey, that the women that said that they did not have prior knowledge, 40% of them expressed interest in learning more about it so that they wouldn't have to go to a clinic, spend money, travel, and go somewhere else to do this. So that's 40% of the women that did not know said that they are going to do research to find out for the next time. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of these are not only going to find out for themselves, but they're going to try to make this information more open source, more available to people that don't know, so that 30% number starts shooting up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So as I'm listening to what you're saying, though, I want to kind of put this question out there, because there might be some people that are listening right now, and they might be thinking to themselves, okay, so some women want to murder their baby at home. Like, what difference does it make if they murder their baby at home or if they murder their baby at an abortion clinic? Like, if somebody were listening right now and they were asking that question, what would be your answer to that question?
Right. So what we're looking for is justice,
Yeah.
right? And we are trying to apply equal justice to all forms of criminal homicide. I
Amen.
mean, that's the same argument of like, okay, people are going to still murder people in their homes. Does
Yeah.
that mean you don't push for laws that make murdering somebody in their home
Right.
illegal?
Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
and, fill in the blank crime. It doesn't have to be that. It can be rape. Okay,
Yeah.
just because this criminal act is going to happen, whether or not it's legal, does not mean that you don't make it illegal.
Yeah.
It just gives you teeth to punish the person that commits this crime.
Yeah. And there's one other aspect of the discussion that I think is important. One other answer to that question that I think it's important to consider. You know, in this battle to end the slaughter of the preborn, we have a short-term strategy and a long-term strategy, right? The long-term strategy is to pass laws of equal justice that establish justice, protect the preborn, and prosecute all that are involved in the act of slaughtering a preborn baby. But we also have a short-term strategy, and the short-term strategy is to go to the abortion mill and to plead with the mother not to murder her baby, and to offer to provide help and service to women that are in crisis pregnancy type situations, to help them choose to make a better decision, right? Choose to honor God and to have their baby and to give their baby life and so forth. And so there's the short term, we're trying to save as many babies as we can right now. And then there's the long term, we want to pass the laws of equal justice and so forth. And we're working both of those strategies at the same time. And I know both you and I are involved in different aspects of both of those parts of the strategy. We both go to the abortion clinic. We both plead with mothers not to carry through with the murder of their baby. We both provide goods and services to women that are in crisis pregnancy, trying to help them keep from making the decision to murder their baby. And then we're both also involved in some form of political lobbying, trying to persuade legislators to pass laws and so forth. When we have a society, or I'm going to call it a market environment, and I know it's weird to call it that when you're talking about the murder of innocent children, but when we have an environment where more and more women are going toward self-managed abortion, they're killing their babies at home, we lose the opportunity to get one last chance to plead for the life of that baby, right? Like right now, they're coming to the abortion mill to have an abortion. Most women are anyway. Now, it's a growing number of women that are looking for alternatives to that. But right now, we got people standing out there with signs. We got people with gospel tracts. We got people offering to provide help and services and so forth. And when as we see women, more and more women shift to self-medicated abortion, to doing abortion at home rather than having to go to the abortion clinic to do it and so forth, we don't have that last opportunity to plead for the life of that baby. And that's a big deal, because we see a lot of women turn away from the abortion clinic when we have the opportunity to do that. We know that there are a number of women that don't even pull into the parking lot when they see people standing there with signs. And we know that there are a number of other women that, if we have the opportunity to talk to them, we're going to be able to turn them away. Certainly more carry through with their abortion than don't. But one of the reasons that this discussion is so important is because when we see more and more women focusing their attention towards self-medicated abortion, obviously there's some legal aspects that we're going to talk about, but another important aspect of that is that we're losing the opportunity to get one last chance to plead for the life of that baby.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, when talking about those distinctions, you're talking about the part where what we do as individuals in our goal to save babies from being killed. That's
Yeah.
what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Certainly, on the other side, we're pushing for legislation that criminalizes abortion as homicide and
Right.
equal
Right.
justice. And that's important as well. And
Right.
you never want to say that just because we're rescuing babies, we're trying to rescue babies at the abortion clinic, that the other part of that doesn't matter, right? Of
Right.
course it
Right.
matters. We're pushing
Right.
for equal justice. Certainly it matters. But when we're talking about women, and we're talking about now we're seeing an increase in women wanting to do at-home abortions and so forth. I think it's a big deal to bring up the fact that one of the things that this does, there's a number of bad things that come as a result of this, but one of the bad things is it takes away our opportunity as
Right.
Christians to try to reach out to that mother and try to persuade her not to go through with that decision,
Right.
sort of one last time before she goes through
Right.
with the murder of her child.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Yeah, and what we're saying is a lot of this stuff is moving online, and we're seeing it in a bunch of different countries, right? In Eastern Europe, especially, we're seeing where abortion is illegal, and also in South America, um,
Yeah,
and I've seen some throughout Africa, but what we're noticing is these pro-abortion organizations, pro-feminist organizations are setting up these abortion they're back alley, right? It's
yeah,
totally underground. They're black market abortion pills, and they're finding ways of distributing them in these countries where it's illegal to go to a clinic and get them, right?
yeah,
So there's channels that are already, there's organizations that are set up, there's distribution that's already in place, where you call a phone number that's advertised to help and give counseling and whatever, and what you're really doing is ordering these pills, right?
yeah.
And there's dark websites, there's just regular websites that deal with it. On Facebook alone, there are community groups where they actively talk about how to do uh, abortion at home. How many pills do you have to take depending on how far along you are, right? What some of the side effects are. How well has it worked? How bad did you get sick? How do you go about finding them? These groups already exist on Facebook, and you can already go and talk to these organizations about how to do this now
Yeah.
at home, right? Whether you're using the abortion pills or various herbs or whatever form you are trying to do,
Yeah.
there's information out there, and what we're seeing is they are becoming more and more proactive and evangelizing with their information, so that if things get to a point where it is illegal in the United States, there's already a mechanism set up to provide the pills to women that still want to kill their children, regardless of whether it's legal or not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask the question, but I think you kind of already answered there. I was going to ask the question, why do you think it is that we're seeing such an increase in discussion and services around this issue of, or around this strategy of self-medicated abortions? Like what is the sudden
Right.
interest? Why is it rising up now?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that go along into it. One of them is the relative ease of um, pill abortion. Just, I mean, just in the clinics themselves, we're seeing an increase there because it's easier.
Yeah.
Um, it's, according to their standards, safer,
Yeah.
right? For the woman that's trying to kill her child. And there's we're that survey that was done in Texas in 2019. They asked the women, what types of things would cause you to do a self managed abortion. And this was the women that have already tried, or the women that thought about it, or even the women that were interested. And some of the answers that they gave were the distance it takes to get to a healthcare provider that will kill your child, the amount of money that it costs to pay the healthcare provider that is going to kill your child, um, the ease in which it is to get the pill. And some of it came down to things like, why would I pay $500 $600, have to make 2 trips to this healthcare facility to see the baby, talk to a doctor, have them give me a pill just to take it at home, when I can spend a fraction of that and do it now, right?
Yeah.
So just the ease that we've made it already, and just the way information is being disseminated, and the popularity of abortion in mainstream culture to begin with, right? The
Yeah.
Just the way the laws are going, and you know, regardless of what side you're on, basically everybody is still it, people's minds haven't changed. There's still the same ratio of people that want the same things, but what we're seeing is reactionary states tending towards their polar extremes, right? So you'll have things in New York where it's free for all.
Yeah.
Doctors, not you don't even have to be a doctor to kill somebody's baby, right? These types of things. And then you have other states that are pushing for equal justice, right? So you have these polar extremes that are making a headway, and so there's a certain writing on the wall where that the average person actually still wants abortion to be legal, right?
Yeah. Right.
And if it's made illegal, okay, well, at least now I know there's a way to go about doing this. You know,
Yeah. I think
I think that's some of it.
what's interesting about that answer too is if you think about it, like going back to when you were going through the survey answers, reasons that they gave, like for example, was having to travel a distance to go to the abortion clinic. Well, what that speaks to is the idea that if we close down abortion clinics, we're going to win the fight to end abortion. I mean, I
Right,
think every time we close an abortion clinic in a certain way, we should celebrate it's a win. But
right,
the reality is that that if women want to murder their baby, they are going to, even if the abortion clinic that was closest to them closes down. I mean, what that survey speaks to is that women that are pro-abortion minded are already thinking of ways that they can still get an abortion, even if it's
right,
inconvenient to get to an abortion clinic.
right.
You
So I
know,
mean, you've got that last clinic right in St. Louis that
yeah,
just
perfect
recently
example.
was being talked about, how they're not doing surgical abortions, right? And man, that's awesome. That's great. But what they didn't make clear is, like, you can drive 10 minutes
Yeah,
across the border and you're at the other Planned Parenthood, right? So I
yeah,
mean, it's great. I mean, it's great that place is no longer doing surgical killing of children. I think that's amazing. But
yeah,
we can't. We have to be honest.
yeah, right,
The Holin's Health in San Antonio closed a couple of years ago, and that was a great day of celebration.
yeah,
Did the number of abortions in the city of San Antonio go down? Not at all. They've all funneled into
yeah,
Alamo,
right,
right? So
right,
so it's there's good, right? So a place is no longer killing children, but
yeah.
we need to be honest about what the implications are.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly important. And what we see when we look at the data from surveys like the one that you're talking about right now, is that as long as the ability of a woman to have an abortion exists in our society, They are going to find a way. Women that are abortion minded are going to find a way to do it. Now, what's
Right.
interesting is that if you have conversation, matter of fact, I just saw our friend, and now all of a sudden, the not a victim. Remind me, her name just slipped my mind.
Christine
Um,
Harhoff.
yeah, Christine Harhoff. We had her on the show. She just sent me a bunch of really, really good stuff.
Hmm.
She just posted something the other day about a conversation she had with a woman, and the question that she asked was, if it was illegal to have an abortion in your state, would you have gone through with it? And she said, undoubtedly, the answer is no, I would not have done that. And so, you see, like, as long as abortion continues to be available in our society, women are going to find ways to do it. As long as it's permitted, women that are abortion minded, they want to murder their baby. They don't want to have their baby. They are going to find ways to go about killing their baby as long as there are no consequences to them for doing it. And
Well, see,
so
and I think that's the thing right there. As long as there's no consequences,
yeah,
right?
right.
So, and that
Yeah.
brings us to the legislation stuff that you wanted to talk about. You know,
Yeah, yeah, because I think that that's very important. When we're is the consequence thing is incredibly important. Why do women, if you shut down every abortion clinic in the state of Texas right now, for example, you're able to shut them all down. Let's say you shut them down. There's no abortion clinics. There's no freestanding abortion clinics. There's no public abortion happening anymore at all right now. And you pass legislation that makes it illegal for doctors to perform abortions, right? Which that's what all the pro-life legislation does. It regulates the doctor, right? That's what
right,
it does,
right,
right? It's still a woman. If a woman, let's say a woman illegally purchases, let's say she illegally purchases abortion pills from, if you're in Texas, it's probably going to be from Mexico, right? She takes those abortion pills and she kills her baby. Okay, then what? Right? She hasn't technically broken the law. She's not
right,
guilty of murder. You know what I
right,
mean? There's no consequence to her at all whatsoever. And what we're
right,
saying is that until such a time as the law righteously reflects the fact that a woman who chooses to kill her baby is committing the act of murder, right? Until such a time, or homicide, we should say, legally speaking, homicide. Until such a time as that is the case, women are going to continue to murder their baby because there's no
right.
consequences to them if they don't.
Right, and we have to be honest to say they'll still do it. There
Sure.
will still be some that do, but when we're talking about this idea of consequence, like you said, we can scrap all of the pro-life laws that define the medical procedures that are regulated for a doctor in order to not be convicted or prosecuted of criminal homicide. Take all of those out. So if a doctor does it, he is open up to prosecution for criminal homicide. That has zero to do with the woman who already has written into the law that she will. It's not going to be considered criminal homicide if the person that kills the child is the woman uh, before birth, right?
Yeah.
So, like you're saying, she can go down to Mexico, get the pill, take whatever series of pills that she wants to, and will not be prosecuted for criminal homicide of that child. Now,
Yeah.
there might be some sort of charges that could be brought for, you know, buying stuff on the black market or whatever type of thing that you do using the internet or whatever the charges may be, but it's still not going to be the same as charging her with the killing of her child, right?
Right.
And that's the mindset where we're at right now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that, I think that's part of what makes this discussion so important when we're talking from a legislative standpoint, is that one of the big barriers that we're having right now is that because of the discipleship program of the pro-life movement, a lot of
Mhm.
pro-lifers, and in particular the leaders, the pro-life establishment, pro-life people have been taught to think, we don't want to go after the mother, we don't want to go after the mother, that's harsh, that's mean, that's not nice, that's not loving. And the reality is, if we don't make it a criminal act for the mother to murder her baby, women are still going to do this. and that's not loving, right?
Right.
The to allow the consciences of mothers in our country to be skewed such that they think that it's okay to murder their baby, and they're going to just go ahead and do it because it's legal. And how many times do we hear that outside of the abortion clinic, right? I'm not breaking any laws. Well, that
Right.
would still be true, right? As long as that continues to be the case, women are going to keep murdering their babies because there's no consequences to them. That's not
Mhm.
loving, right?
Right.
And I think we need to start pursuing that narrative more, because people think, for some reason, people have it in their head that if we criminalize the doctor, we make abortion illegal without talking about all the court discussion, because that's part of the discussion as well. But let's say we could make abortion illegal and criminalize the doctor. A lot of pro-life folk would say, yes, let's do that. If we could do it tomorrow, let's do it tomorrow. And they think that if they did that, that all of a sudden abortion would end, because now there's not going to be abortion clinics and so forth. And so therefore women will no longer murder their babies. Well, what your data it tells us, and what we're talking about here shows us, is that that simply isn't the case. And so when we
Right.
when we try to legislate in that way based on that premise, we're actually living in a fairy tale land, right? Like
Right.
that's not real life.
Right. And what we're doing right now by dragging our feet is we're allowing them to already do parallel access and start shifting over before they get kicked out, right? So it's like all of the conservatives that are moving over to uh, Gab, is that what it's called?
Yeah,
And still doing the Facebook until the Facebook kicks them out,
yeah,
right? So the self-managed abortion is a similar thing where they're
yeah,
already transferring over to doing that in increasing numbers, and they are going around showing people how to do it, and making the information more accessible
yeah,
so that when they get kicked off of the Facebook, or when it's made illegal,
yeah,
they've already the change has already shifted, right?
yeah,
So we're part of that happening right now, and that's really where what I want people to see
yeah,
is that. I mean, that's why I wanted to do this episode, and I think we've done a good job of bringing that information up,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that
There's
was my purpose.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's one other thing that's worthy of mentioning, and I'll just mention it, and then we'll close out the episode with our encouragement here. But one other thing that's worthy of mentioning is, um, I want to make it clear, and I don't think this will be a surprise to most of our listeners, but I want to go ahead and put it out there anyway. I want to make it clear why we believe that these at-home abortions, that these self-managed abortions are wrong, because you might be inclined to think, especially if you haven't been around our show very long, or you haven't been around some of the movement that we're a part of very long, you might be inclined to think something like that we're against self-managed abortions because they're more dangerous for the mother. And that would be a common pro-life argument that you might hear. That is not why we're against self-managed abortions. We're against self-managed abortions for the same reason that we're against all other abortions, which
Mhm.
is that babies are created in the image of God. And since they're created in the image of God, you cannot unjustly kill them. That's our
Right.
argument. And when we're talking about self managed abortions, like we want to have the discussion and show, just like you just said, Callie, that people are transitioning from one thing to the other thing here. And it may be, it might be true. And we'll hear some pro life folk make the case that, well, this is a bad thing because it's more dangerous for women to do the self medicated abortion route. And to that, we would say it should be dangerous to kill your baby,
Mhm.
right? Because a
Right.
lot of people use that argument against us. To
Right.
that,
It
we would
should be
say,
dangerous to kill anybody.
yeah, right,
Should be.
exactly. Yeah, that's it. It should be dangerous to kill a person. Our point is to say it's wrong to kill a baby. And we're seeing people transfer to killing babies this way, becoming more efficient and so on and so forth. But it's not that we don't care about the health of the mother. We don't want mothers to die, but we don't want
Mhm.
them to have abortions to begin with and put themselves in that situation to begin with. And so
Right.
we're saying it's wrong to murder a baby, and we're seeing this shift toward a more efficient way of going about doing it, and we want to shine a light on it.
Right. I would agree.
So All right, awesome. Well, I think we've, like you said, I think we fully covered the topic here. Did you want to throw out a piece of encouragement before we close it out here today?
Sure. I'd like to encourage people to actually look into self managed abortion. Look into some of these countries that are already developing means by which they can get pills to people. Start looking at some of these organizations that are putting out information. You'll be shocked just to listen to some of the conversations that these women are having with each other on how to do this, and it's just right out there in the open. And I would encourage you to go just look into that, and so that you can see the importance of this topic, so that you can come about this in a legislative aspect with more clarity, especially as you talk to like pro-life people and women that are trying to kill their children.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. And I think, I mean, my encouragement would be along the same lines. Just understand this self-directed abortion thing is out there, and it's going to continue to grow the more that abortion, that traditional avenues of abortion become more difficult. It's going to continue to grow. And the thing that we have to understand as Christians is that our standards need to be built around a biblical ethic based upon the word of God. And when we do that, we're going to see that our solutions are godly solutions to addressing the problem, address these issues as well. Versus if we behave pragmatically, then we're going to leave this back door open for women to continue to kill their baby with no consequences. And so,
Mhm.
my to summarize, I would say my encouragement would be think biblically. That would be my encouragement to close out the episode. So, with that, I think we want to invite everybody to join the resistance and will the sword of truth. Our Lord has left us here to navigate through this world as priests in the kingdom of God, apply the mind of Christ, and battle against the culture that hates God and loves death.